So a lot of questions that we've been getting for the I think it's 13 people that are watching us. It's a lot of questions about the book. A lot of people on the internet is very interested in the book, Dad's
Are they
book.
complaining about the prices? Because I agree with them. I think
Yeah,
my baby pictures do set it off, but nobody should drop $1,500 on a book.
yeah. I think that's somebody that's
Because
someone
there's so few of them.
I know, but it's someone that has bought it and then put that price on it.
But I mean, there's not that
It's
many
not
out
like
there.
I know, but it's not like
It's like a Hornets Wagner card. I mean, it's not like there's like a bunch of them floating around out there.
yeah. So
But I think it's kind of cool that there's not that many of them out there.
right.
I just want Phil to do the hologram cover. So if you're listening or watching, I know you are hidden up there in New York somewhere.
Um, so someone asked, is there anything that isn't that Dad didn't write in the book that we think should be in the book?
I don't think there's anything that isn't in there that should be, but there were things that he just didn't like, didn't really want to talk about coming from a broken home. He just pretty much summed it all up by saying that no one else I knew had anything either, so he didn't really know any difference. He didn't want to get into the fact that,
talk about
that his dad,
Mhm.
my grandmother had 4 children. She was, and before my dad was born, my grandfather left my grandmother with 3 kids and my dad on the way. Dad had no relationship with him and never really just wanted to discuss that. He just, I don't really care.
Yeah, do you think a lot of that? I think maybe drove Dad like
To be an independent and
just. I think it probably
attitude.
I think in his wrestling career and his journey, I think
Trying to prove something.
Yeah,
possibly. Everything has a beginning and an end.
Okay, so you keep going about his upbringing.
Didn't want to go into the fact that my grandmother worked 3 jobs, and Dad. I mean, this time, Dad was a latchkey child. This is like in the 1940s. Like this is like my dad was born right after we entered the war, after the Japanese attacked us, which is ironic because he always ended up managing Japanese wrestlers. But so to grow up as a latchkey child from a broken home, single parent family in the 1940s and the 50s, like my mother also did, so maybe that's why they gravitated towards each other, because that was an odd upbringing because they're both from broken homes. He didn't really want to talk much about that, but that's kind of the fact that he didn't have a father. He was also sort of allowed to run wild. That's how he fell into the, shall we say, wrong crowd occasionally, and was apt to mischief and maybe fracturing a law or 2 or 3 or 10 before he ended up hooking up with Billy Gales and Fred Kohler and the rest of them, and Billy Gales, and telling him, hey, you better straighten up or you're going to, wrestling pretty much probably saved Dad from either ended up in jail or dead, probably. Because like he told me one time, he goes, when you're a kid with no parameters and there's no boundaries, you can like pretty much run wild. And that's kind of what he did. So that he,
it's like Hulkamania.
Yeah, he touched on some of that in the book, but he didn't want to go to like, because it's like, yeah, he raised all fathers. Who cares? He didn't care. And I mean, maybe that's why he was with us the way he was, because he didn't have one. But that's not really that different from a lot of guys who come from that situation. But back in that day, like early during World War II and up till like in the late 40s and early 50s, that was extremely odd. And another thing that he didn't want to go into really was his problems with the IRS. He didn't want to talk about that, but guys in the dressing room knew, because they all had problems too. They were all asking about the same lawyers. Now, the only time he would ever mention something like that is when years later, when we'd be in a dressing room. I don't know why I was in any dressing rooms in the late 90s. I just happened to find myself there. And there were some young up-and-comers. They'd come up to Dad and say, what advice would you give me? Dad would just say, stay straight with the government. Don't start, try not to pay taxes. I mean, just because you have the Al Capone gimmick don't mean you got to live it, but he certainly did.
Do you think that IRS, Irwin or Shyster, was... No, seriously.
Putting goes to rib on the boys, yes.
Yeah.
Of course it was, but Mike is very, very good with numbers, and he always paid his taxes.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Probably the only guy in the dressing room who was straight paper above board.